The terminal at John F. Kennedy International Airport buzzed with the controlled chaos of global travel. Glass walls reflected the late afternoon sun, and the air carried the faint hum of jet engines and the murmur of 1,000 conversations. My name is Alexander Crane, and as the CEO of Crane Enterprises, a conglomerate spanning technology, logistics, and luxury hospitality, I am no stranger to the rhythm of airports. I've crisscrossed the globe more times than I can count, each journey a carefully orchestrated step in building an empire. But today, as I approached the check-in counter for Transglobal Airlines, I was about to embark on a flight that would test my patience, redefine my resolve, and alter the course of an entire airline. I handed my passport and boarding pass to the check-in agent, a young woman named Emily, whose practiced smile wavered as she scanned my documents. "Good afternoon, Mr. Crane," she said, her fingers tapping rapidly on the keyboard. Her eyes flickered to the screen, and a shadow crossed her face. "I'm sorry, sir, there's an issue with your booking." I tilted my head slightly, my expression neutral but expectant. "An issue? What kind?" She hesitated, her voice softening as if to cushion the blow. "It appears your first-class seat has been reassigned due to an overbooking. You've been moved to premium economy." The words landed with the weight of an insult. Premium economy? I had paid a premium for a first-class seat on this 12-hour flight from New York to Dubai, a seat that promised privacy, comfort, and the kind of service that makes long-haul travel not just tolerable but productive. My company's success depends on precision, and I expect the same from those I do business with. Transglobal had made a promise, and they were breaking it. "That's unacceptable," I said, my tone calm but edged with authority. "I booked first class months ago. This is your error, and I expect it to be corrected immediately." Emily's smile vanished, replaced by a nervous glance toward her supervisor, who was engaged in a heated discussion with another passenger. "I understand your frustration, sir, but the flight is fully booked. There's nothing I can do. We can offer a partial refund or—" "I'm not interested in refunds," I interrupted, my voice steady but firm. "I want the seat I paid for. Get your supervisor." She nodded quickly and hurried to fetch the man in the navy blazer, who introduced himself as Mr. Thompson, the duty manager. He was older, with a polished demeanor that suggested years of handling disgruntled passengers, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease as he reviewed my booking. "Mr. Crane, I deeply regret the inconvenience," he said, his tone overly conciliatory. "Due to a system error, your seat was reassigned. It's an unfortunate but rare occurrence. We've placed you in the best seat in premium economy, and I assure you, it's quite comfortable." Comfortable? The word grated against my senses. Did he think I was some leisure traveler who could be placated with a slightly wider seat and a complimentary beverage? "Mr. Thompson," I said, leaning forward slightly, "I lead a company that operates across 6 continents. I don't fly first class for comfort. I fly first class because I expect a standard of service that your airline guaranteed and is now failing to deliver. Fix this, or I'll take this further." Thompson's jaw tightened, but he maintained his professional facade. "I'm afraid there's no first-class seat available, sir." The passenger in your seat is already on board, and we cannot displace them. I can offer a full refund, complimentary lounge access for your next flight, and priority boarding today." I studied him for a moment, my mind already shifting gears. This wasn't just about a seat anymore, it was about principle. Transglobal had made a deliberate choice to prioritize someone else over me, and I intended to find out why. "Who's in my seat?" I asked, my voice low and deliberate. Thompson blinked, caught off guard. "I'm not at liberty to disclose that, sir. It's a matter of passenger privacy." I nodded slowly, my resolve hardening. "Very well," I said, picking up my carry-on. "I'll board the flight. But this conversation isn't over." Thompson's relief was palpable, though he mistook my compliance for capitulation. "Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Crane. I'll ensure the crew takes excellent care of you." I didn't respond. As I walked toward the gate, my phone was already in my hand, and I was dialing Claire, my assistant, whose efficiency is matched only by her discretion. "Claire," I said when she answered, "I need everything you can find on Transglobal Airlines: ownership, board of directors, financials, and recent operational issues. I also want to know who's sitting in seat 2A on flight TG 472 to Dubai. Be discreet." "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice crisp and professional. She knew better than to question me when I spoke with this kind of focus. The jet bridge to the aircraft felt longer than usual, each step fueling my determination. I stepped onto the plane and glanced left toward the first-class cabin, where plush seats and gleaming accents promised the experience I'd been denied. In seat 2A sat a man in his 40s, dressed in a garish suit, laughing loudly with a flight attendant as he sipped champagne. He had the air of someone who believed the world existed to serve him. I committed his face to memory and continued to my seat in premium economy, a cramped row near the back of the cabin. The seat was, as Thompson had claimed, comfortable, by some minimal standard, but it was a far cry from the lie-flat bed and personalized service of first class. The passenger next to me, a harried businessman, was already typing furiously on his laptop, his elbow encroaching on my armrest. I settled in, but my mind was elsewhere. This was no longer about a single flight. It was about a company that had lost sight of its obligations to its customers and, I suspected, its employees. The flight attendants began their pre-flight routine, and I observed them with a critical eye. The senior flight attendant, Margaret, moved with the efficiency of a seasoned professional, but her demeanor was cold, her smile a mere formality. The rest of the crew followed her lead, their actions mechanical, their enthusiasm non-existent. As the safety demonstration played, I opened my tablet to review the initial data Claire had sent. Transglobal Airlines was publicly traded, but its largest shareholder was Horizon Capital, a private equity firm known for aggressive cost-cutting. The CEO, Richard Langley, had overseen a rapid expansion that prioritized market share over service quality. The board included several notable figures, one of whom, Edward Grayson, I'd worked with on a logistics deal years ago. He owed me a favor, and I intended to collect. Claire's next message was about seat 2A. The passenger was Victor Russo, a mid-level executive at a tech startup with no apparent ties to TransGlobal. He'd been upgraded from business class due to the same system error Thompson had cited. I smirked. A system error that favored a nobody over a high-value client? Someone had made a choice, and I was determined to uncover who. The plane took off, and I spent the first hour observing the crew's interactions. Margaret handled a spilled drink in first class with a tight-lipped efficiency that bordered on contempt. Another flight attendant, a younger man named Daniel, seemed more genuine but was constantly deferring to Margaret's sharp commands. The service in premium economy was lackluster, drinks arrived late, and my request for a specific meal was met with a shrug and an apology that it wasn't available. I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to my legal team, outlining the situation and instructing them to prepare for a potential escalation. If TransGlobal thought this was just about a seat, they were about to learn otherwise. Crane Enterprises had significant investments in the travel industry, including partnerships with competing airlines. A single phone call could shift millions in contracts away from TransGlobal, and I was prepared to make that call if necessary. As the flight continued, I struck up a conversation with the businessman next to me, a man named Paul who worked in supply chain management. He was frustrated too, not about his seat, but about the airline's declining service. I used to love flying TransGlobal, he said, shaking his head. But lately, it's all about cutting corners. The staff seem miserable, and it shows. His words confirmed what I'd already suspected. This wasn't just about my experience, it was systemic. TransGlobal's leadership had prioritized profits over people, and the crew was paying the price. I felt a pang of sympathy for the flight attendants, but it didn't change the fact that their service had failed to meet even basic expectations. Someone had to be held accountable. Halfway through the flight, I decided to test the crew further. I pressed the call button and asked for a glass of water. It took nearly 10 minutes for Daniel to respond, and when he did, he looked frazzled. "Sorry for the delay, sir," he said, handing me a plastic cup. "We're short-staffed today." "Short-staffed?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "On a flagship route like this?" He hesitated, glancing toward the galley where Margaret was barking orders at another crew member. "It's been a tough week," he admitted quietly. "We're doing our best." I nodded, letting him go. His honesty was refreshing, but it didn't excuse the overall failure. The crew wasn't just short-staffed, they were disengaged, and that was a leadership problem. Margaret's attitude was setting the tone, and it was dragging everyone else down. I spent the next few hours reviewing more data from Claire. TransGlobal's customer satisfaction scores had plummeted over the past year, and employee turnover was at an all-time high. Online reviews echoed Paul's sentiments. Passengers felt neglected, and staff appeared demoralized. I began to see the bigger picture, a company that had lost its way, led by executives who valued spreadsheets over human beings. But I also saw an opportunity. If I could force TransGlobal to confront its failures, I could not only rectify my own experience but also drive meaningful change. As we approached Dubai, I finalized my plan. Firing the entire crew might sound extreme, but it wasn't about petty revenge. It was about sending a message. No one, not even a major airline, could treat their customers, or their employees, with such disregard and expect to get away with it. But I needed to be strategic. A public spectacle would be satisfying, but it wouldn't solve the root problem. I needed to hit Transglobal where it hurt, their reputation and their bottom line. We landed in Dubai at dusk, the city's skyline glittering against the desert horizon. As I disembarked, I caught Margaret's eye. She gave me a curt nod, oblivious to the storm that was coming. In the terminal, I made a series of phone calls. The first was to Claire, who had dug deeper into Transglobal's operations and confirmed that Horizon Capital was under pressure from investors to improve the airline's performance. The second was to Edward Grayson, my contact on Transglobal's board. "Edward," I said when he picked up, "we need to talk about Transglobal. I had an experience today that's unacceptable, and I'm not the only one. Your airline is failing its customers and its staff. I want a meeting with Langley and the board, and I want it this week." Edward was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I've heard similar complaints, Alex." "What are you proposing?" "I'm proposing change," I said. "And if Transglobal isn't willing to make it happen, I'll make sure the world knows why." Over the next few days, I orchestrated a calculated campaign. I flew back to New York, but my team in Dubai was already working with local media to amplify the story. A carefully worded press release detailed my experience, not as a personal grievance, but as a symptom of Transglobal's broader failures. I instructed my PR team to encourage other passengers to share their stories, and soon, social media was ablaze with complaints about overbooking, rude staff, and delayed flights. One post, from a mother whose family had been separated due to an overbooking error, went viral, garnering millions of views. By the time I sat down with Richard Langley and the board in a sleek Manhattan conference room, Transglobal stock had dipped 3%, and the pressure was mounting. Langley was a wiry man with a sharp gaze, but his defensiveness was evident as he leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Crane, I understand your frustration, but this was an isolated incident. We're doing everything we can to address it." "Isolated?" I said, sliding a folder across the table. It contained Claire's research, customer satisfaction data, employee turnover statistics, and a timeline of overbooking scandals stretching back 2 years. "Your airline is bleeding customers and staff because you've prioritized profits over people. My experience is just the tip of the iceberg, and the world is starting to notice." Langley's face paled as he flipped through the documents. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you want, Crane?" he asked, his voice tight. "I want accountability," I said. "Starting with the crew on flight TG 472. Their service was unacceptable, and I want them gone. But that's just the beginning. I want a public apology from Transglobal, a $10 million investment in crew training, and a complete overhaul of your booking policies to prevent overbookings. If you agree, I'll keep my company's contracts with you, for now. If you don't, I'll escalate this to every media outlet, investor, and competitor I know." The room was silent. Edward Grayson cleared his throat. "Richard, we can't afford another PR disaster. Mr. Crane's terms are reasonable." Langley's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "Fine. We'll do it." The crew was terminated the following week, a decision that sparked fierce debate online. Some praised it as a stand against poor service, others decried it as an overreach. I didn't care about the optics. My goal was to force Transglobal to confront its failures, and the crew was a symbol of a broken system. But I knew they weren't the root cause. Margaret's coldness, Daniel's exhaustion, they were products of a company that had stripped away their resources and morale. To ensure lasting change, I monitored Transglobal's progress closely. They issued a public apology, acknowledging their shortcomings and outlining their reform plan. The $10 million training program rolled out within months, focusing on customer service and employee well-being. A new booking system was implemented, reducing overbookings by 80% in the first quarter. By the following year, Transglobal's customer satisfaction scores had climbed, and they even won an industry award for innovation. As for Victor Russo, the man in seat 2A, I learned he'd been upgraded at the last minute by a gate agent hoping to curry favor with his company. The agent was quietly disciplined, but I chose not to pursue Russo further. He was a minor player in a much larger game. I haven't flown Transglobal since, not out of spite but because I've learned to prioritize my standards. My time is too valuable for airlines that can't deliver. The next time I book a flight, I'll ensure the carrier knows exactly who they're dealing with. And if they fail me, they'll face the same lesson Transglobal learned. No one disrespects Alexander Crane and emerges unscathed. But the real victory wasn't personal. It was knowing that thousands of passengers would board Transglobal flights in the future and experience the service they deserved. It was knowing that employees like Daniel could work in an environment that valued their efforts. And it was knowing that, in a world where corporations often forget their human obligations, one man's resolve could force them to remember.